My world is one of patience, observation, and verifiable data. As Dr. Althea Vance, a botanical geneticist, my life unfolds in the quiet, climate-controlled environment of my home greenhouse and laboratory. I find truth in the slow, deliberate unfurling of a leaf, in the precise language of a DNA sequence. My sister, Cassandra, finds her truth on a much louder stage. A failed actress turned wellness guru, she peddles instant enlightenment through her online brand. Celestial Self, a dizzying array of counterfeit herbal tinctures and crystals. She sells magic. I practice science. The collision was inevitable. It began, as it often did, with a demand disguised as a spiritual breakthrough. My phone screen lit up with Cassandra's perfectly curated, glowing face, a lush jungle behind her. "Thea, you're not going to believe the universal alignment," she exclaimed. "I've been called to go on an 8-week spiritual deep dive in Costa Rica. I'll be sourcing rare, high vibrational ingredients directly from the Earth Mother." I pinched the bridge of my nose, the scent of damp soil and orchids filling my senses. 8 weeks. Cass, what about the boys? That's where you come in, my beautiful, grounded sister. She beamed. "Rowan and Jasper need to be with you. They need your stable energy while I'm elevating my consciousness for the good of humanity." She didn't wait for an answer. She declared it a cosmic certainty and vanished from the screen. A few hours later, 9-year-old Rowan and 6-year-old Jasper were on my doorstep. They were pale, quiet boys who spoke in the borrowed language of their mother's brand. When Jasper tripped on the welcome mat, Rowan told him to check his root chakra for blockages. They looked at the thriving, complex ecosystem of my greenhouse with a strange mixture of awe and suspicion. The first few days were a struggle. The boys refused the fresh food I offered, asking for their mothers or cleansing smoothies instead. My life, once a predictable rhythm of research and data collection for a breakthrough paper on orchid genetics, was now punctuated by arguments over the nutritional value of goji berries. I called Cassandra, intending to lay down the law. "This is unsustainable," I said firmly. "You have to come up with another plan." Her serene facade cracked. "Don't you dare," she hissed, her voice losing its ethereal effect. "You think your little life in your dirty house is so important. I will end you, Thea. I'll draft an anonymous letter, complete with fabricated lab notes and falsified data, and send it to your university and to Nature Genetics. I'll say your entire orchid project, your precious paper, is a fraud. They won't even question it. A scandal is always more interesting than the truth." A cold pit formed in my stomach. A charge of academic fraud, even a baseless one, was a death sentence. Retractions, blacklisting, the end of a career built on integrity. She had found my jugular. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. I couldn't let her win, but more than that, I couldn't let these boys drown in her sea of nonsense. I decided to introduce them to a different kind of magic, the real kind. I cleared a small bench in the greenhouse and designated it as their own research station. "We're going to learn the secret language of plants," I told them. We started with the basics, potting seedlings, testing soil pH with litmus paper, pollinating flowers with tiny brushes. I watched as their skepticism melted away, replaced by a fierce, focused curiosity. Rowan, ever the protector, meticulously tracked the growth of their bean sprouts in a little notebook. Jasper, the gentler soul, spent hours watching a ladybug on a leaf, asking questions about its life cycle. They were learning to observe, to question, to understand. They were becoming scientists. Their transformation was a quiet joy, one that was violently interrupted by my mother's arrival. A true believer in the Church of Cassandra, she surveyed my life's work with disdain. "All this sterile thinking. Thea, no wonder you're alone. You need to open your heart to the mystery." The argument was as old as we were. It culminated in front of my most prized possession, a genetically unique vanilla orchid. The culmination of 5 years of crossbreeding. Its first flower was about to bloom. My mother stared at it. "This plant has a dark energy," she declared. "Cassandra says stagnant energy must be purified." Before I could process her words, she uncapped a bottle of Himalayan purification salt solution from Cassandra's product line. "I'm cleansing your space for you," she said, and poured the corrosive, saline liquid directly onto the orchid's delicate root system. I screamed. A sound of pure agony. The plant began to wilt almost instantly, its vibrant green leaves turning a sickly brown. She had taken years of my work, a living, unique creation, and murdered it with a charlatan snake oil dot as I threw her out of my house, sobbing. I knew this was no longer just about me and my sister. It was about truth and lies, knowledge and ignorance. A week later, I received a call from a lawyer. He was representing a group of people who had suffered severe allergic reactions and chemical burns from Cassandra's all-natural skin creams. He confirmed my darkest suspicions. She was under investigation for fraud and for selling dangerous, unregulated products. Her Costa Rica trip wasn't a retreat. It was a business meeting with her shady suppliers to source cheaper, more potent counterfeit ingredients. Armed with this knowledge, I told Cassandra I had spoken to a lawyer. Her response was swift and terrifying. She was coming back. I was working late in the lab, analyzing the data from the one viable clipping I'd managed to save from the murdered orchid. The house was dark, the boys upstairs asleep. A flicker of movement on one of the low-light, motion-activated cameras I used to monitor nocturnal plant behavior caught my eye. It wasn't a possum. Two figures, cloaked in darkness, were creeping through my greenhouse. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was Cassandra, and with her, a large, intimidating man I didn't recognize, her supplier. They weren't here for the boys. They moved past the living room and directly towards my lab. They were here for my research. I flattened myself against the wall as they slipped inside. "Get the lab books and the main hard drive," Cassandra whispered frantically. "If her data disappears, her word is meaningless. It's my word against the crazy plant lady." They were trying to erase my work to make her accusation a fraud stick. As the man moved towards my main server, I acted on pure adrenaline, lunging for the emergency power-off switch. He was too fast. He grabbed me, his hand clamping over my mouth, my body pinned against his. I watched in horror as my sister, my own flesh and blood, began ransacking my lab, tearing through my papers, her face a mask of desperate greed. It was all there, recorded in crystal clear, infrared detail by the very cameras meant to capture the gentle blooming of flowers. The police were astounded by the clarity of the footage. It was irrefutable. The break-in, the attempted industrial espionage, the assault. It was all there. Cassandra and her partner were arrested before sunrise. The story unraveled spectacularly. Her wellness empire was exposed as a dangerous scam, and my mother was implicated for helping to finance the illegal operation. The custody hearing felt like a formality, but it provided a chilling conclusion. Cassandra, choosing to represent herself, didn't plead for her children. She launched into a paranoid tirade against Big Pharma, the scientific establishment, and the patriarchal suppression of feminine earth wisdom. She looked at the judge, a man of law and evidence, and told him his aura was a money brown. It was the final, perfect illustration of her madness. She wasn't just unfit. She was living in another reality. I won full custody. There was no grand celebration. There was just a peace. A few weeks later, I was in the greenhouse with the boys. We were gathered around a small pot, where a single, tiny green shot was pushing its way out of the soil. It was a clone grown from the clipping of the orchid my mother had destroyed. Rowan was logging its progress in his notebook. "The cellular regeneration is successful, Aunt Thea," he said with great seriousness. Jasper gently misted its tiny leaves. "It's resilient," he whispered, a word he had learned from me. I looked at them, my boys, their faces bright with a hard one, genuine wonder. They were no longer speaking of chakras and auras, but of resilience and regeneration. We had taken something broken and, with patience and knowledge, we were nurturing it back to life. Together, in the quiet hum of the greenhouse, surrounded by the steady, persistent truths of the natural world, we were finally home.